Roldan gave us his input statement as post-growth economic thinking seems to assume that a post-growth phase of capitalism is possible. This is a naive idea. So again, Roldan, the floor is yours.
So thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. I'm very glad to talk to you here today. I hope that this exchange will be fruitful for all of us. So before commenting on this specific statement, I wanted to draw your attention to the words you are using now, to the narrative. I mean, I think I will build up on what Tony said. I think that colonization will not only take place, through appropriation of resources or invasion or violence, but also through the language we use, the narrative we adopt. And for example, this, if I'm not mistaken, this workshop is called Development Cooperation in the Post-Growth Era. I'm right, yeah. So if we look at it, the title of this workshop, there are three key concepts. The first is development, the second is development cooperation, and the third is post-growth. So if you look at development, then as a concept, as a narrative, and then it might be, as Tony and Rajeswari already said, very problematic. First of all, because it suggests there is only one story for the world, and also implicitly divides the world in between countries that have been developed and all the rest of the world, that is the majority of the world, which is underdeveloped or developing or emerging or whatever you want to call it. And that's an extremely problematic way of looking at the world, because it creates a permanent sense of frustration, first of all, in the majority of the world, who have to feel that they have not achieved what they are supposed to achieve. And secondly, because it creates a hierarchy in the world between developed and the rest of countries. So, and that's related to the second concept, this concept of development cooperation. It's very much based on this idea that the world is divided between those who need aid and those who provide aid. And that's, again, extremely problematic way of looking at the world, between people that need help and people that give help. Because the people that give help, they also have the power to impose some narrative. And then the third concept, the concept that is the concept of post-growth, somehow, and that's going now to the specific statement I made, is somehow supposing that there is a era of post-growth. So that means that we had a previous era of growth, and then it's not clear to me what that era means. I mean, it's that might be, for example, the case for Europe, where you had a kind of golden age of capitalism during the 50s and 60s with full employment, and the welfare state was consolidated, etc. But that's not the situation of the rest of the world. Yeah? But what I wanted to say in the statement is that proposing that we are moving into a post-growth era is a very naive way of looking at the world. First of all, because I think growth is an inherent feature of capitalism. It's not possible to have capitalism without growth. First of all, because capitalism has two main driving forces. One is consumption, and the second is innovation. So, a second feature of capitalism that's very important is the very asymmetric relationship between labor and capital. So that's asymmetry is widening. What we have seen, and that might explain, for example, the emergence of extreme right-wing movement around the world. Is the incapacity of governments to deal with this widening asymmetry between capital and labor, and that means worsening labor conditions for many people in the world. So if there is a drop of consumption within capitalism, what is labor who is going to suffer? And that's exactly what we have seen with the pandemic in the US, for example. We have a lot, before the pandemic, it was almost full employment in the US. And then the pandemic meant not a reduction of the production capacity, but a reduction of consumption. And this was then reflected very rapidly in a basic loss of jobs, of labor. So I think it's very extremely difficult within the capitalist system to reconcile a reduction of consumption at the same time an improvement of labor conditions and expansion of jobs. Because the third feature of capitalism, or maybe well, capitalism has many features, but a third important feature for my statement is that work in capitalism is not voluntary. I mean, it's forced. If you don't work, you are excluded from the system. At least capitalism as we know it. So therefore, in order to be considered a citizen, in order to live in the capitalist system, you have to work. So it seems very difficult to reconcile this double goal of having a job in order to survive, at the same time to reduce consumption. Because if you reduce consumption in the current system, you have no jobs. So I think that I will finish here.